Evolution of psychology. What is evolution? It is the gradual development of something. In the process of evolution, changes will be into a different and usually more complex or better form. Psychology did not emerge directly as a science. Psychology's intellectual parents are the disciplines of philosophy and physiology. We will see how psychology evolved from these as a science we see today. Before that, please remember to subscribe the channel. Thank you. Early psychologists. The earliest psychologists that we know about are Greek philosophers, Plato and Aristotle. These philosophers asked many of the same questions that today's psychologists ask. For instance, they questioned the distinction between nature and nurture. What is nature? It occurs from the DNA inherited from parents and are the traits we display from birth. Then what is nurture? It is the shaping of personality through exposure to parenting, surrounding relationships, home, life and education. That is, nature we get by birth and nurture through the interaction with the environment. Then free will. Free will is an individual's ability to make decisions about their behavior. That is, what a person behaves is his decision and it is not influenced by the environment. Plato argued on the nature side, believing that certain kinds of knowledge are innate or inborn, whereas Aristotle was more on the nurture side, believing that each child is born as an empty slate and knowledge is primarily acquired through learning and experience. Thus, Plato and Aristotle were considered as the early psychologists. Structuralism. It is a theory of consciousness. Structuralism is a systematic movement. It is founded in Germany by Wilhelm Wundt. It is a theory of consciousness that seeks to analyze the elements of mental experience, such as sensation, mental images, and feelings, and how these elements combine to form more complex experience. That means structuralism study the small elements of mental experience. And these small elements are put together to form a complex experience. So by studying the small elements, the complex experience is understood. Then the major tool of structuralist psychology was introspection. It is the self-observation of one's consciousness. That is, we observe our own consciousness. For example, consider you are drinking Pepsi or any soft drink and you are experiencing this cold, bubbly or sweet properties of the drink. So you are concentrating on what you are experiencing. You are drinking Pepsi and you are concentrating on what you are experiencing, like the cold, bubbly, sweet thing of the drink. Here you are utilizing the technique of introspection. The structuralism then developed by Wundt's student Edward B. Teichner. He proposed 3 elementary states of consciousness. They are sensation, images and affections. Sensations are sight, sound, taste, etc. Images include the components of thoughts and affections are also the components of emotions. So this is all about structuralism. Functionalism. It is a broad school of thought and originated in United States. during the late 19th century, and it attempted to counter the German school of structuralism. William James. He was a pioneer in the development of functionalism and was most heavily influenced by Charles Darwin. People's mental process and behavior were dictated by how they adapted to the environment. What we studied in structuralism is like they concentrated on different parts of the mind. Here in functionalism, it concentrated on how the mind adapted to change in its environment or situation. So that is the difference between the structuralism and functionalism. There, the different part of the mind was studied, and here how people are adapted to the environment is studied. In his book, The Principles of Psychology, William James described 4 concepts he believed were the basis of his theory of functionalism. These were the stream of consciousness, emotion, habit, and will. Functionalism but faded away as a theoretical force in psychology. Psychodynamic psychology. It is developed by Austrian physician Sigmund Freud. He changed the face of psychology in a dramatic way by proposing the theory of personality. Psychoanalytic theory attempts to explain personality, motivation, and mental disturbances by focusing on unconscious determinants of behavior. Here the focus is on unconscious part of mind. The unconscious thoughts and impulses are expressed often through slip of the tongue, and it is known as Freudian slips, and the impulses are expressed through dreams also. So the unconscious thoughts and impulse of a person are expressed via the slip of the tongue or through his dreams. According to Freud, psychological disorders are the result of unconscious conflict becoming extreme or unbalanced. If the unconscious conflict in a person become unbalanced, what happened? He developed a psychological disorder. Sigmund Freud developed an innovative procedure for treating people with psychological problems, and it is called psychoanalysis, that is analyzing the mind. So psychoanalysis was developed by Sigmund Freud, and it is a procedure for treating people with psychological issues. Many psychoanalytic concepts have filtered into mainstream psychology. Psychoanalytic concepts are still used in today's psychology. So this is about the psychodynamic psychology by Sigmund Freud. Behaviorism. Behaviorism suggests that psychology should be the science of behavior that can be observed by others. John B. Watson described psychology as the study of behavior. According to him, behavior is governed primarily by the environment. This approach is often referred to as stimulus-response psychology. That is, our behavior is in response with the stimulus from the environment. Watson was influenced by the work of Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov. His discovery of the classical conditioning process proposed that behavior could be learned via conditioned association. Let's have a look at the Ivan Pavlov's experiment. He experimented with dogs. A bell was sounded each time the dog was fed. Every time when the dog is being fed, a bell sound was ringing. Later what happened? The dog started salivating whenever it heard the bell sound. The dog here learned to associate the bell sound with the food it was given. And this is the classical conditioning process. According to B.F. Skinner, all behavior is governed by external consequences. Organisms tend to repeat response that lead to positive outcome. For example, consider you are a boy and you smiled at a girl. If she smiled back at you, what happens? You tend to repeat the responses. Next is organisms tend to not repeat response that lead to neutral or negative outcome. Not individuals have free will. Consider if the girl didn't smile back at you, that is she gave a neutral or a negative response. Then what happens? You will not repeat the response. So the people respond to the external stimuli and not individual have free will. You are not deciding your behavior. It is governed by external consequences. Then, from the behavioral school, the therapeutic techniques such as behavior analysis, behavioral modification, and token economics are often utilized to help children learn new skills and overcome maladaptive behavior. That is, for the children with maladaptive behavior and to help learn the children new skill, several techniques from this behavioral school is taken. And the classical conditioning is used in many situations ranging from parenting to education and to deal with certain kind of phobias. Humanism. American psychologist Carl Rogers is often considered to be one of the founders of this school of thought. Rogers believed strongly in the power of free will and self-determination. Free will is an individual's ability to make decisions about the behavior. Psychologist Abraham Maslow contributed to the humanistic psychology with his famous hierarchy of needs theory of human motivation. This theory suggested that people were motivated by increasingly complex needs. Once the most basic needs are fulfilled, people then motivated to pursue higher level needs. For example, when the food, water, that kind of basic needs are satisfied, then people become motivated to pursue the next level. They need more money, they need house. Likewise, after reaching every level, people are motivated to pursue the higher level. Cognitive psychology. It suggests that to fully understand human behavior, psychologists need to focus attention on internal mental events. It is a field of psychology that studies mental processes, including perception, thinking, memory, and judgment. The introduction of brain imaging tools such as MRI and PET scans have helped improve the ability of researchers to more closely study the inner workings of the human brain. People interpret the stimuli that they experience. For example, when a boy says to a girl that you are so beautiful, a behaviorist would probably see this as a reinforcing stimulus. The girl might not be so easily fooled. She might try to understand why the boy is making this particular statement at this particular time and wonder if he might be attempting to influence her through the comment. The cognitive psychologist take into consideration how stimulus are evaluated and interpreted, and they understand behavior more deeply. This is how the cognitive psychology works. Social cultural psychology. The study of how the social situation and the cultures in which people find themselves influence thinking and behavior. Social cultural psychologists are particularly concerned with how people perceive themselves and others and how people influence each other's behavior. An important aspect of social cultural psychology are social norms, the way of thinking, feeling, or behaving that are shared by group members are perceived by them as appropriate. Social psychologists have found that we are attracted to others who are similar to us in terms of attitude and interest. And we develop our own belief and attitude by comparing our opinion to those of others. And there are chances that we frequently change our belief and behavior to be similar to those of the people we care about. And this process is known as conformity. This is a quick recap of what we learned. Structuralism. It is based on the study of the basic elements of our psychological experiences. Functionalism is based on how our behavior is adapted to the environment. The psychodynamic psychology focused on the role of our unconscious thought, feeling, and memory and our childhood experience. Then behaviorism. It is the study of behavior itself. And they believe that the behavior is governed by environment. Humanism. They believe strongly in the power of free will and self-determination. Cognitive psychology. They study the mental processes including perception, thinking, memory, and judgment. Social cultural. They study how the social situation and the culture in which people find themselves influence thinking and behavior. Hope you like this video on the evolution of psychology. Please share it. Thank you and keep smiling.